On Friday, the 14th of February, the NTSB gave us an update on the latest on the DCA Mid Air, including some additional holes in the Swiss cheese model of accident investigation, specifically regarding the evidence found on the Blackhawk's cockpit voice recorder. And speaking of the Swiss cheese model, the father of the Swiss cheese model, James Reason, passed away earlier this month on the 4th of February, 86 years old, in England. In his groundbreaking 2001 paper, The Swiss Cheese Model, James Reason admitted that humans are prone to error and that we need to have barriers to prevent us to trap and to capture these errors. But occasionally, there's little holes in each barrier where a mistake can be made, and if those holes line up perfectly, like this example here, it can lead to an accident. But in this accident, there's an entire barrier missing in the design of a helicopter route system around DCA that is literally within the vertical tolerance of a barometric altimeter, much too tight, without positive control by the tower at DCA to stop the helicopter traffic before they cross under airliners, and instead rely solely on visual see and avoid. And we all know about the limitations of see and avoid, especially under NVGs or night vision goggle flying. Over the weekend, we had a UH-60 Blackhawk helicopter from the local Army National Guard divert into my local airport here in Nevada County due to bad weather while doing an exercise during the Bamboo Eagle exercise going on the last couple of days. We got a great review of the altimeters and radio setup in this Lima model helicopter, very similar to, if not almost exactly, to that of the accident aircraft in Washington, D.C. More on that in just a moment. Regarding these routes, a BLANCOLIRIO viewer found this draft plan from 2004 specifically addressing these routes and concerns about noise along these routes. And it shows you just how many different folks use these routes. It's not just the Army helicopters. Down here at the bottom of this page, they explain some of the different folks that use these routes: the FBI, the DEA, the Coast Guard, Customs, U.S. military, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, also private entities including hospitals, media, and commercial operators. As of 2002, there were 48 heliports and 16 airports in the Washington, D.C. area that use these routes. And here they describe each route in detail. Route 1 is located on the east side of the Potomac River from Tyson's Corner across the tidal basin, up the Anacostia River, and along the Baltimore-Washington Parkway. The flight path starts at 1,300 feet near Cabin John, drops to 700 feet, down to 300 feet near the Washington Monument, to 200 feet across the tidal basin and lower Anacostia River. From here, Route 1 transitions to Route 4, where the route is to remain under 200 feet until clear of the Woodrow Wilson Bridge. And Route 4 is said to fly straight up the middle of the Potomac River. So Route 1 is designed to hug the east side of the Potomac River, but Route 4 is designed to fly up the middle of the Potomac River, may explain why the helicopter was turning a bit towards DCA as they made the transition from Route 1 to Route 4, further closing the tolerance of altitude between the two aircraft. There should have been no reason for that helicopter to proceed with that jet landing at the same time. Here's what Jennifer Homendy had to say about these routes on her latest NTSB briefing.
On this chart, you'll see the routes they were generally following: helicopter Route 1 to helicopter Route 4. These routes are designated by the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, and although you see blue lines, there are no defined boundaries to these routes. You'll note on the chart that pilots are expected to maintain the maximum altitude charted when ceiling permits, unless otherwise instructed by air traffic control.
The NTSB in their Friday briefing confirmed that the helicopter was, in fact, on VHF and not UHF, but was on a separate VHF frequency from that of the tower. 2 other holes in the Swiss cheese was uncovered by the NTSB regarding these radio communications. Listen up.
CS 789, contact Belmarsh, good day.
Have a good day.
American 3130, slow to final.
Slow, American 3130.
Pat 25, traffic just off the Woodrow Bridge to CRJ at 1,200 feet, start runway 33.
Pat has a traffic site request visual separation.
This separation crew. American.
Pat 25, traffic just south of the Woodrow Bridge of CRJ. It's 1,200 feet circling for runway 33. It's believed that on the CVR of the Black Hawk helicopter, that portion of the conversation about circling for runway 33 was blocked or not heard by the Black Hawk crew. Regardless, the Black Hawk crew acknowledged that they had the traffic in sight and request visual separation. The same thing they've been doing for years out here. Normalization of deviance. If the Black Hawk crew did not pick up on the fact that the CRJ was going to circle to runway 33 over here, they would have assumed that he was continuing his straight in to land on runway 1, setting them up for disaster. And if the Black Hawk crew did not pick up on the fact that the CRJ was circling to runway 33, they more than likely than not would have picked up on American 1630, the aircraft behind the CRJ, which was doing the straight in to runway 1. That may very well have been the aircraft that the Black Hawk helicopter reported in sight. The next communication problem occurs just 17 seconds prior to impact.
Pat 25, get the CRJ in sight. Pat 25, pass behind the CRJ.
Pat 25 has a aircraft in sight request visual separation.
This separation.
Right here, according to this cockpit voice recorder of the Black Hawk helicopter, the words pass behind the were blocked by a keyed transmission by the pilot monitoring in the Black Hawk. But again, regardless, Pat 25 said he had the aircraft in sight and the request visual separation. And it's more likely than not that the aircrew of the Black Hawk helicopter was instead watching American Airlines Flight 3130 as the aircraft that they had in sight, never seeing the CRJ until much too late. Apparently, the CRJ saw the Black Hawk coming at the very last moment and pulled nearly full up elevator, but the aircraft was still descending on glide slope. This is a UH-60L out of Mather Air Force Base, Army National Guard unit out of there. They're part of the Operation Bamboo Eagle today, simulating a search and air rescue of a downed airman right up there in the mountains. But right now, it's too snowy. They can't get in. So Pete and Chris here are in the L model of UH-60, UH-60L. So this is some vintage equipment, and this is similar to what the situation, the aircraft that was used in Washington, D.C. in that mid-air collision. But if you're the person getting the check ride, you're normally going to be over here in the right seat. Your altimeter, your baro altimeter is here, and your other baro altimeter is right there. Your radio altimeter is right here. So when you're talking to ATC and everybody, you're primarily using your baro altimeter. Flying low over the water to keep situational awareness of how close you are to the ground, you'll back that up with the radio altimeter. But your primary altimeter source is going to be the old baro altimeter. So that's critical that it has the correct altimeter setting and that the two altimeters match within 50 feet of each other. The UH-60 Lima.
Absolutely.
What do you think, Pete? Now, regarding altimeter discrepancy, the NTSB noted on the CVR that the two pilots indicated a discrepancy of 100 feet difference between the two altimeters, between the altimeter on the left side of the aircraft and the altimeter on the right side of the aircraft. Remember, on the ground, when you're getting ready to take off, your altimeter should be within plus or minus 75 feet of the field elevation once you dial in the local altimeter setting. Now, I'm not sure what the Army does, but they probably follow guidelines similar to this. But in the civilian world, in order to fly legally IFR and on instrument flight rules, you need to have your altimeter tested once every 24 months via a pedostatic test. And your altimeter needs to be within 20 feet of the test standard. And that tolerance of 20 feet goes up as you go up in altitude. So it starts out at 20 feet here at sea level and then goes up to a 100-foot tolerance at 14,000 feet. Now let's check out the variety of old UHF and VHF radios available in this Blackhawk, very similar to that of the accident aircraft.
Here on the radio stack, we've got what it calls ARC 231s, kind of a handful to deal with, but these are Victor Uniform and FM. There and there, you've got a CAL FIRE radio, kind of unique to California here, and then another VHF radio located
VHF
right
FM,
here,
so, yep.
VHF FM. So you got VHF and UHF capability.
So that gives you kind of a first-hand view of how these helicopters are able to split up between VHF radio communications or UHF radio communications. And this CAL FIRE radio is unique to California because the Blackhawks are often pushed into use to help with firefighting capability here in California. So I hope this gives you a better understanding of what investigators are looking at as they fill in the holes in the Swiss cheese model of accident investigation as to what happened to the DCA Mid Air over the Potomac River. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. See you here.